suit. This is the modern submarine escape mechanism. Didn't have these when I was on board. We had what was called a stanky hood, and that's right over here. This is a stanky hood. This is what I trained on and what we used on our submarine if we had to escape. This is a diving bell where they lowered it down and it could attach to the sub and they can haul some people out if they needed to. It was replaced by the DSRVs, as you can see. And we're going to go into the torpedo gallery here. Sneak through. And now we're in the torpedo gallery. What you see in front of you right here is a German electric torpedo. And on the other side of it, we have our copy. We made our Mark 18 torpedo, which is right here, based on the German torpedo. This was battery powered. The warhead was right here. This warhead section, forward battery, after battery, electric motor, and control for the fins. Had 2 counter-rotating props. This was used in World War II, but the primary weapon in World War II was the Mark 14 torpedo, which is right here, this black one. This is a Mark 14. It was the mainstay of World War II torpedo technology. Once they got rid of the 2 problems that it had, one was it ran too deep, so it would go underneath the targets, and the other was the actual firing pin mechanism in the warhead would deform on a direct impact and not explode the warhead. So they fixed those 2 problems and the success rate went up phenomenally. The next torpedo that came in after this guy was the Mark 37 torpedo. This green guy right here is the Mark 37 torpedo. Spent lots and lots of times arming and disarming these torpedoes. The exploder went in right here, and this forward guide stud was actually over the top of it. They have it in the wrong position, but you would take off the forward guide stud, get a spanner kind of clip wrench here, pull it out, and pull out the exploder. The exploder, I'll show you when we go back around the other side, what it looks like. Goes into the cavity. It's all warhead here, and then when it detonated, it would had a booster charge that would then fire off the main warhead. This is also an electric torpedo. It's a swim out. Basically, a swim out torpedo, you don't, you know how in the old times they would impulse a weapon out, force it out of the tube? This one didn't. The motor would just start and it would swim out on its own. It had 2 counter-rotating props as well. This is a prop guard on it. They believe this is what did the Scorpion in. That they jettisoned a hot run 37 without the propeller guard on it. It left the tube and armed, and then circled back around and hit it. Over here we have the Whitehead torpedo, the Howell torpedo. So these were the early torpedoes that we used. And this is the Whitehead. This is what a torpedo tube looks like. This is one side of a 4-tube cluster that was on the submarine, class of submarine these came off of. Submarine, my first submarine, we had 6 torpedo tubes in the bow. This tank right here is called the WRT tank, the water round torpedo. And it was used to provide the water that was used to impulse weapons out. Remember we talked about swim out and impulse? Well, the water that you forced into the tube had to come from somewhere, and it came from the WRT tank. This is the end of, not the end of the torpedo tube. They actually cut these off. Imagine this extending another 20 feet to the bow where the muzzle door was. Can't really see there. But this is a cutaway of the WRT tank. You can see that there's valves, if you want to call them that, we call them slide valves, on the tube that would let the water go in. The ram that forced that water into the tubes and out the front was located in the bilge of the torpedo room. We don't have one here, but it was an air-water ram. One half of it was air, the other half was water. And when they fired a torpedo, you basically opened up that air valve. It let that ram go forward, pushing all that water in the ram and in the WRT tank into the tubes. It had to go somewhere, so it went out the front and carried the torpedo along with it. All kinds of interlocks, all these little levers and things, these are all interlocks. They had padlocks on them so that you couldn't just arbitrarily move them. But if you were to break the interlocks, you could have the muzzle door and the breech door open at the same time. Not good. You could also have more than one breech door open in a nest. Also not good. So there were safeguards for that. Over here we have our current weapons. Okay. The green one down here is the Mark 48 torpedo. This is an original Mark 48. It's not an ad cap, but it's our current weapon. The Mark 48 ad cap, which is advanced capabilities, is the same frame but has better electronics, a larger acoustic panel on it, and does other things that this one cannot do. I talked about that exploder. Here's the Mark 19 exploder. This is what went inside of a Mark 37 torpedo. This part here doesn't explode. This little blue thing up here is the part that goes boom. That's your booster charge that starts the main warhead explosion. And we had to put those on and off when we armed the torpedoes. They were kept in a separate blast-proof locker in the torpedo room away from the torpedoes. And when we had to get a torpedo ready, we would get one of the boosters and made it to the Mark 19 exploder and then put the exploder into the weapon. The Mark 48 does it differently. The exploder is built into the weapon. It would normally be right here, this round circular area. That's where the Mark 48's exploder was. And to arm it, all we had to do was undo a screw at the top, and it was armed, or ready to be armed. Once it left the tube and all the conditions were met, a little feeler would go up where that screw was, and if it could go up and then back down, it would arm. If it couldn't go up, it would never arm. So removing that screw was very important. It uses what's called a pump jet propulsor. That's in this green shrouded area. There's an impeller and a stator, and it's kind of like a turbine when it spins, and it's driven by a little motor. This is how big that motor is. It drives it. It's an external combustion 6-cylinder motor. It uses Autofuel 2, which is a stabilized nitroglycerin, and it has a swash plate, and as it burns that fuel, it moves this swash plate, which results in a rotation of the shaft, turning the impulsor. This torpedo is wire guided, as is the Mark 37. The 37 wire guide comes out the bottom down here, this little hole right there.